So coming up this weekend is going to be UFC Seattle, with the headliner being Song Yadong taking on Henry Cejudo, and I did think that they were going to add at least one short notice matchup to the card because they did only have 11 confirmed bouts, and this is one of them. Now, Austin Vanderford versus Nikolay Veretennikov was not a matchup that I expected. I personally have been waiting for maybe a potential replacement to fight against Billy Goff, but this one's pretty good too. Now, Austin Vanderford made it pretty far in Bellator. He actually fought for the title against Gegard Mousasi, was knocked out in the first 90 seconds of that fight, and then unfortunately for him was also followed up with another KO loss in the first 90 seconds. So he has come off a couple of bad performances, but recently made a big comeback, come down to 170 pounds despite previously fighting at middleweight. It looked pretty good against Victor Romero. Now, he did get very scrappy in that matchup, like he always does, but it did lead to a win. Now, this fight has been added at 175 pounds, so it is a catchweight bout, because initially when the fight was announced, I thought it was going to be at welterweight, and I was worried that both of these guys weren't going to make weight. Now, for Vanderford, being a former middleweight, he looked quite big in his matchup in the LFA at 170 pounds, but he wasn't really a big middleweight as per se, but I was worried about him making the weight on about 4 days notice or so, or whatever it is at this point. And as for Nikolay Veretennikov, he is a big welterweight. He stands at 6'1", but he is also a pretty big dude. He's got a lot of muscle to his frame, and I did worry about maybe him making the weight on short notice too. But 175 gives both guys a little bit of leeway there from that natural weight class that they are going to be fighting at outside of this. Now, talking about this fight, it is a wrestler versus striker matchup. Nikolay Veretennikov very much is a striker. He likes to come forward, he likes to be somewhat patient, but when he does go, he does have a lot of power, and he does have one-shot KO power, which we have seen very recently throughout the regional scene after his first Contender Series fight against Michael Morales, where he has been getting very quick wins after pressuring his opponents forward up against the cage and landing some big shots on them. Now, this is going to be an interesting one because it's going to test his takedown defense. For Veretennikov, we didn't really see too much takedown defense required in his previous fights against these opponents here, but against Michael Morales, Morales did attempt eight takedowns on him, and he defended only 4 of them. But then against Danny Barlow attempted 2 takedowns on him, and he was able to defend them both in that matchup there, which went 3 rounds. As for Vanderford, he does wrestle a lot. That is very much his style. In his matchup where he defeated Fabian Edwards, he was just wrestling, constantly coming forward, and always getting takedowns on Edwards, which was quite impressive because Edwards went on actually to be quite successful at 185 pounds after this fight, because then Edwards went on to fight for the title a couple of times against Johnny Eblin. But then, of course, the losses did happen, and the losses both happened in pretty much the exact same way. In the first minute of the fight, Austin Vanderford got caught, and then while attempting takedowns, he got caught again. And as for Vanderford, you can see how this happens if you watch his fight, and I actually think even the fight he won recently, you can see how he gets knocked out, because he will come forward, and he kind of is similar to Cody Garbrandt in this way, as if he gets caught, he instantly tries to get one back, and he will go into the pocket, and he'll throw combinations, and he'll throw down and trying to get that strike back, that big moment back, or maybe even get a knockout of his own, which did work against Romero. But against Nikolay Veretennikov, I don't think it's really the best kind of idea, because I think that Veretennikov is the better striker here. We just saw him go 3 rounds at range with Danny Barlow in a fight which potentially he could have won. I did still think that Barlow won the fight, but it was close. It was a split decision, of course, but you know, we just saw Veretennikov go out there against a pretty good rangy striker and go 3 rounds with him in a close matchup in striking. And for Vanderford, he just isn't really the best striker. The chin is a little bit of a worry, but he has been KO'd by 2 somewhat powerful guys. Not really guys known for KO power, but that does happen when you leave yourself wide open. And he left himself wide open against Romero, which does lead me to believe that Nikolay Veretennikov can go out there and get the KO over Austin Vanderford. But as I said, it's going to be a test of that takedown defense. I personally don't really know how good Veretennikov's takedown defense is, especially considering Vanderford does have a wrestling background, and his style very much is constantly shooting for takedowns and getting those takedowns and trying to get that control. So it really is a tale of 2 sort of styles. Will Vanderford go out there and just get the takedowns over and over and over again against Nikolay Veretennikov to lead to a decision? Or Is Veretennikov going to be able to catch Vanderford by pressuring him forward or lowering Vanderford into a brawl? Which I think in that case, Very does heavily favour Veretennikov. And from what I've seen from Vanderford, it seems like in all of his recent fights, even in the fight against Fabian Edwards, it does seem like he does get quite reckless in the striking. That was not something that was changed in the 2 years or so that he took away from the Bellator loss and his fight against Victor Romero. So I think he's going to get scrappy. And I think, especially being in front of a big crowd as well, I think that he's going to go out there and try and get the knockout. But I think that Veretennikov is going to be able to catch him and be able to get that knockout win himself. So I'm going to pick Veretennikov here to win the fight by knockout. And I think it's an interesting short notice fight, to be honest. Signing Vanderford's pretty cool. It tells us that they're pretty keen on signing former Bellator guys. I would like to see them maybe sign Patchy Mix. That's kind of the number one guy for me. Aaron Pico, I know, is on the radar. I think his contract ends somewhat soon, so that would be pretty cool. But as I said, I think we're waiting for the replacement of this fight now at this point, because we got the replacement for Cruz pulling out. We got the replacement for Tricoli pulling out. Let's see if we can get Billy Goff fighting someone. Now, I really would love Billy Goff to fight against Andreas Gustafsson, but I don't know if Gustafsson will be ready for that fight. Let me know what you think in the comments below about that fight, and I'll see you guys in the next one.